The city had changed overnight. Where bustling streets had once carried the hum of life, now silence pressed heavily. A thick fog rolled in, not from the ocean but from the shadows of fear and uncertainty that gripped every corner of dead America's largest quarantine zone. The government's voice was urgent and unyielding: remain indoors. The quarantine is mandatory. Do not attempt to leave. The message blared from every screen, every radio, every crackling speaker mounted on street poles like ominous sentinels watching over a dying city. Among the few who still moved within the quarantine zone was Alex Grant, a former paramedic with haunted eyes and a tight jaw. He crouched behind a rusted car, scanning the empty street. His breath formed quick, shallow clouds in the cold morning air. Somewhere out there, beyond the barbed wire fences and armed checkpoints, something was wrong. Something worse than the virus they'd all been told about. Alex had been trapped here since the quarantine began, along with a small group of survivors who shared a grim bond forged by desperation. They met in secret rooms and abandoned shops, whispering stories of the outside world's collapse, of neighbors turning violent, of soldiers disappearing without explanation, and of shadows moving in unnatural ways after dark. Inside a dimly lit safe house, Mara Delgado lit a candle, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows on the peeling walls. Mara was a journalist, once known for uncovering the truth. Now, her voice was low and cautious, filled with doubt. "They're lying," she said, her fingers trembling slightly as she held a crumpled piece of paper. "This quarantine isn't about containment. It's about control." Alex leaned forward, the weight of exhaustion clear in his stance. "What do you mean?" "The virus." "Not just the virus," Mara interrupted. "Listen to this." She unfolded the paper, revealing a series of intercepted radio transmissions and anonymous notes scribbled in code. These transmissions, they talk about Project Lazarus, some kind of experiment buried deep beneath the city. Something that went horribly wrong. A silence fell over the group. The small circle of survivors, Alex, Mara, and a few others, had clung to hope that the quarantine was temporary, that help was coming. Now, hope was a fragile thread unraveling fast. Outside, a distant rumble broke the quiet. The ground trembled faintly beneath their feet. Alex's hand instinctively went to the pistol at his side, though he hated using it. Mara's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" Before anyone could answer, a sudden explosion shattered the eerie stillness. The walls trembled as debris rained from the ceiling. The group scrambled for cover, hearts pounding, breaths ragged. When the dust settled, they peeked out. The street was no longer empty. Figures staggered into view, twisted, grotesque shadows of the people they once knew. Their skin hung loose, eyes milky and wild. The infected. But these weren't just mindless monsters. They moved with purpose, a chilling coordination that sent cold dread through Alex's veins. They seemed to hunt, to communicate in guttural growls and sharp, jerking movements that betrayed a terrifying new intelligence. Mara grabbed Alex's arm. "We have to get out. Now." Outside the quarantine zone, the world was crumbling fast. Reports leaked through underground networks of entire cities falling silent, of mass evacuations turned to bloody chaos, and of governments collapsing under the weight of an enemy that wasn't just a disease but something else, something darker. Inside the quarantine, the survivors faced a brutal truth: the virus was only the beginning. The real nightmare was still unfolding. They were trapped inside a cage of secrets, lies, and monsters who were once human. Alex glanced around the small group. Each face bore the same haunted look: fear, determination, and the spark of hope that somehow, against all odds, they might survive to uncover the secrets that led to this apocalypse. As the infected closed in, the quarantine was no longer a protective boundary, it was a tomb. "If you want, I can now continue to part 2 or make any adjustments to style, tone, or detail. Just let me know." The cramped room smelled of stale air and fear. Outside, the infected roamed closer with every passing minute, their groans a constant reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the boarded-up windows. Inside, the group huddled around an old radio, its static crackling like a heartbeat. Mara adjusted the dial, desperately seeking any signal that might offer hope. The radio's voice came through, fragmented and distorted, but unmistakably human. "If anyone can hear this, you're not alone." The government lied. The virus was no accident. Project Lazarus, it was an experiment, gone wrong. Mara's eyes burned as she scribbled down the garbled message. There are others. People out there who know the truth. We're not the only ones trapped in this nightmare. Alex leaned back against the wall, exhaustion threatening to swallow him whole. The weight of the quarantine pressed down, heavier than the walls that kept them confined. How do we know it's real? Could be another trap. A sharp rap on the door startled the group. Mara grabbed the pistol from the table, her finger trembling on the trigger. "Who is it?" A voice, low and urgent, whispered from the other side. "It's me. James. I'm part of the research team. I have information. Please, let me in." The door creaked open, revealing a tall man with hollow eyes and a blood-stained coat. His presence sent a ripple of unease through the survivors. Could they trust him? James collapsed onto a chair, his breath ragged. "I worked in the underground labs beneath the city. Project Lazarus was designed to find a cure, something to bring people back from the brink. But it became a weapon." Mara's pen paused mid-sentence. "A weapon? What do you mean?" James swallowed hard, pain flickering across his face. The virus wasn't natural. It was engineered. The quarantine was to contain not just the infected, but the truth. The military wanted control over a new form of life, soldiers who never tire, never feel pain. Alex's jaw tightened. But it got out of control? James nodded. The infected evolved faster than anyone expected. The virus rewrites the brain, enhancing aggression in something else. They're no longer just zombies, they're hunters, predators with purpose. A loud bang echoed through the building. Everyone froze. Mara whispered, "They're coming." The survivors scrambled to barricade the doors and windows. Outside, the infected clawed at the walls, their growls growing louder, more coordinated. The quarantine had become a battleground, and the survivors were trapped in the crossfire. James pulled out a small device, a makeshift scanner. "This can track their movements, but it only works for a short time." Alex took the device, hope flickering in his tired eyes. "Then we use it. We find a way out of here before this place becomes a tomb." Hours passed in tense silence. The scanner beeped intermittently, mapping the infected's patterns. Mara listened carefully to the radio, catching fragments of a broadcast from beyond the quarantine. Safe zones compromised, evacuation impossible, survivors must band together, resistance forming. The words sparked a fragile hope. Somewhere out there, others were fighting. But the price of survival was clear, trust was a luxury no one could afford. Inside the quarantine, paranoia gnawed at the edges of the group. Whispers of betrayal and hidden agendas seeped into conversations. James's arrival was a turning point. Was he truly an ally, or a harbinger of deeper danger? Mara studied him closely. "Why did you come here? Why risk everything?" James's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Because I owe it to the people who died in those labs. Because someone has to stop this madness." The night stretched on, shadows creeping like silent watchers. The infected outside shifted, adapting to every barricade, every desperate plan. The survivors knew they couldn't stay locked away forever. The quarantine was a prison, and its secrets were bleeding out in every whisper, every frightened glance. Alex stood by the window, watching the city's distant lights flicker and die. Somewhere beneath those ruins lay the key to survival, or total annihilation. Mara joined him, voice barely above a whisper. "If the government really wanted to help us, why hide the truth?" Alex shook his head. "Because the truth is more dangerous than the virus." The radio crackled again, this time clearer. "To all survivors in dead America, the end is not yet written. Hold on. Find each other. The truth will set us free." The words hung in the stale air, a fragile thread of hope in a world gone dark. As the first light of dawn pierced the quarantine's grim skyline, the survivors prepared to move. The city outside was no longer a place to hide, it was a battlefield where secrets and survival collided. Their fight was just beginning. If you want, I'm ready to write part 3 next or tweak anything you want. Just say the word. The dawn was cold and gray, a thin mist clinging to the broken streets like a shroud. The survivors moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by cracked pavement and scattered debris. Alex led the way, clutching the scanner James had given them, its faint beeps pulsing like a heartbeat in the silence. The infected were out there, somewhere beyond the barbed wire and burned-out vehicles. But today, they seemed different, more alert, more deliberate. Alex's gut twisted with unease as the scanner's signals grew stronger. Mara stayed close behind, eyes scanning every shadow. "They're learning," she whispered. "Not just hunting, but communicating." A sudden rustling to their left made them freeze. The group pressed against the cracked wall of an abandoned storefront. Alex raised his pistol slowly, fingers tight on the grip. From the alley emerged not the usual shambling infected, but a figure moving with uncanny speed and precision. Its eyes glinted with something almost human, calculating. It paused, then let out a low, guttural growl. The survivors exchanged glances. This wasn't the mindless enemy they'd faced before. This was evolution. "We need to move," James said urgently. "They're not just infected anymore. They're predators." The group darted across the street toward a half-collapsed building. Inside, the stale air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Mara pulled out the radio, desperately scanning for signals, but only static replied. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. Heartbeats thundered. Alex spun around, but no one was there. A deep growl echoed in the distance. The infected were closing in, smarter, faster, more coordinated than before. James studied the device again. The scanner's working, but only for a few more minutes. "We need a plan." "We don't have time," Alex snapped. "We have to keep moving." Mara's voice cracked with tension. "What if we're walking into a trap?" Outside, the infected began to swarm, their numbers swelling like a rising tide. They circled the building, pressing in with a hunger that sent shivers down the survivors' spines. Alex grabbed a pipe from the floor. "We fight if we have to. But we have to get to the underground tunnels. If James is right, the labs beneath the city are still operational. That's where we'll find answers." The group prepared to move again, the weight of each step heavier than the last. As they slipped through broken alleyways, they witnessed the city's slow death, fires burning unattended, abandoned cars overturned, and the faint cries of the infected echoing through the fog. Suddenly, a scream pierced the silence, raw, desperate, and close. Alex spun toward the sound, pistol raised. A young woman stumbled into view, her eyes wide with terror. Her clothes were torn, blood smeared across her face. "Help me," she gasped. "The infected, they're hunting in packs now. They're smarter, we can't hold them off." Mara stepped forward, her journalist's instinct overriding fear. "What happened? Where's your group?" The woman shook her head, tears streaming. They didn't make it. I'm alone." The survivors exchanged looks, every new face meant more risk, but also more truth. "We have to keep moving," Alex said firmly. "Come with us. The labs might hold the key." The woman nodded, her breath ragged. "I'm Lila." Together, they made their way toward the tunnel entrance, a rusted grate half buried in rubble. James knelt and began working the lock with tools scavenged from the abandoned building. Behind them, the infected's growls grew louder, a relentless chorus that promised no mercy. The grate finally gave way with a groan. The survivors slipped inside one by one, descending into darkness. The tunnel smelled of damp stone and forgotten secrets. Flickering emergency lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, revealing faded warnings and biohazard signs. Mara shivered. "This place, it's a tomb." James moved ahead, his voice low. "The labs are deeper down. Follow me." The group followed in silence, the only sounds their footsteps and distant, unsettling noises from the darkness ahead. Suddenly, a door creaked open, revealing a room filled with flickering monitors and scattered papers. The survivors stopped, eyes scanning the chaotic scene. Alex picked up a torn document, reading aloud, "Containment breach, elevated aggression, enhanced cognitive functions, this confirms it. The infected aren't just zombies. They're evolving." Lila's voice trembled. "How do we fight something that's becoming smarter?" James looked grim. "We don't. We survive. We find a way to stop the spread before it's too late." A sudden alarm blared, piercing the silence like a siren of doom. Red lights flashed, casting the room in a hellish glow. "They know we're here," Mara said. "We have to move. Now." The survivors raced through winding corridors, dodging obstacles and broken machinery. The infected's growls echoed closer, their intelligence allowing them to anticipate their every move. At a fork in the tunnel, Alex halted. "Split up. We can't all make it through that narrow passage together." Mara looked at him, disbelief in her eyes. "Split up? Are you crazy? We stick together or we don't survive." "No choice," Alex said. "We cover each other." Reluctantly, the group divided. Alex and James took one path, Mara and Lila the other. As Alex disappeared into the darkness, a chilling thought struck him: the infected weren't just attacking, they were hunting, strategizing, adapting to their every move. The battle for survival had changed. The enemy was no longer mindless flesh. It was cunning, dangerous, and relentless. Outside the tunnels, the quarantine walls trembled under the weight of the growing horde. Inside, the survivors faced their deadliest challenge yet, a fight not just for their lives, but for the secrets buried deep beneath dead America. Let me know when you want me to continue with Part 4, or if you'd like any tweaks. The tunnels swallowed Mara and Lila whole. Every step echoed off damp stone, the air thick with the scent of mold and something far more sinister: decay, death, and the remnants of forgotten horrors. Behind them, the distant snarls of the infected clawed at the silence, growing louder, closer. Mara gripped her flashlight tighter, its beam cutting through the darkness in trembling arcs. "We need to find the control room," she whispered. "The monitors back there, they showed something important. Something the military didn't want anyone to see." Lila shivered but nodded. "If the truth's down here, we have to uncover it. Even if it kills us." They moved deeper, the corridor narrowing, water dripping from cracked pipes above. The faint hum of machinery buzzed somewhere ahead, a faint beacon of life amid the ruins. Suddenly, the tunnel forked sharply left and right. Mara hesitated, studying a faded map scratched into the wall. "The control room's to the right," she said. Lila swallowed hard. "And the other way?" "Probably leads to the lab's storage or containment area," Mara replied, eyes scanning the shadows. "But we don't have time. The infected are hunting in packs. They're closing in." Footsteps echoed behind them. Mara spun, flashlight slicing the darkness, only to find a figure emerging from the gloom. It was Alex, his face smeared with grime and worry. "We're split," he said, voice low but urgent. "James took the left path. I couldn't follow without risking being caught. We need to reunite at the control room, it's the only place with data on the quarantine's real purpose." Mara nodded. "Let's move." They pressed on, the corridor twisting and sloping downward. The walls here were scarred with deep gouges, as if something massive had tried to escape. Lila's breath hitched. "What could do that?" Mara shook her head. "I don't want to find out." Ahead, a faint glow seeped through a heavy steel door. Alex stepped forward and pried it open, revealing a cavernous room lined with flickering monitors and tangled wires. Dust-covered consoles, but a few screens flickered weakly, still alive with static. Mara approached one and wiped the grime away, revealing grainy surveillance footage, twisted shadows moving through the quarantine zone, infected with something different. More intelligent. More terrifying. Then, a chilling message scrolled across the screen. Containment failed. Project Lazarus compromised. Initiate Protocol Omega. What's Protocol Omega? Lila asked, voice trembling. James's voice crackled suddenly over the radio they'd salvaged earlier. It's a kill switch, he said grimly. Designed to destroy everything, infected and survivors alike, if the virus couldn't be contained. Mara's eyes widened. You're saying they were prepared to wipe us out? All of us? James's voice dropped to a whisper. The quarantine wasn't just a prison. It was a trap. A way to control the spread by any means necessary, even if it meant genocide. The room grew colder as if the walls themselves absorbed the weight of that revelation. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the tunnels. Red lights flooded the control room, and a mechanical voice echoed. Protocol Omega activated. Countdown, 30 minutes. 30 minutes? Alex barked. We need to get out, now. Lila's eyes darted to the monitors, tracking the infected's movements. They're converging on this location. We won't make it if we go back the way we came. Mara's mind raced. There has to be another exit. A maintenance shaft or an emergency tunnel. James's voice returned on the radio, strained and urgent. There's a hidden elevator shaft in Sector C, a direct route to the surface. But it's heavily guarded, and may not even work. Then it's our only chance, Mara said, slinging the radio onto her belt. The survivors grabbed what supplies they could, med kits, batteries, makeshift weapons. As they moved toward the exit, the ground trembled violently. Outside, the infected had breached the outer defenses. Their coordinated assault shook the entire quarantine. Mara glanced back as the heavy steel door began to seal automatically, the countdown clock glowing ominously above. Everyone, move! Alex shouted. They sprinted through darkened hallways, heartbeats pounding in time with the ticking clock. Shadows danced in the flickering light as the infected closed in, their snarls now almost deafening. Lila stumbled, gasping. Mara caught her arm, steadying her. Keep moving. We can't stop. Finally, they reached a reinforced door marked with a faded Sector C sign. Alex and James worked frantically to override the lock. Behind them, the infected's pounding grew louder, relentless, merciless. With a hiss, the door slid open, revealing a narrow elevator shaft descending into darkness. James checked the control panel. It's still operational, barely. But the cables might not hold. Mara swallowed her fear and stepped inside. We have no choice. One by one, they entered, the door sealing shut behind them. The elevator jerked downward, lights flickering as the countdown neared 0. In that suffocating silence, only one thought echoed in Mara's mind: the truth inside the quarantine had destroyed everything. Now, it might destroy them all. Let me know when you're ready for Part 5. The elevator shuddered violently as it plunged deeper beneath the city, the groan of its rusted cables a haunting soundtrack to their desperate escape. Mara clung to the railing, heart pounding as the red countdown clock echoed relentlessly in her mind. 20 minutes left before Protocol Omega wiped everything from the map. James pressed a trembling finger to the control panel. This thing's ancient. If it fails, we're falling into the abyss. Alex scanned the small space, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Then we better make sure it doesn't. The others exchanged fearful glances, the weight of their dwindling time pressing on them like the crushing darkness closing in from all sides. Suddenly, the elevator jolted to a stop. The lights flickered and went out, plunging them into complete blackness. A collective gasp filled the cabin. Power's out, James muttered, fumbling for his flashlight. Mara's hand found Lila's, squeezing tight. Stay calm. We'll find a way. Alex struck a match, the tiny flame flickering weakly before revealing the claustrophobic walls and grim faces illuminated in brief orange light. We need to manually open the doors, Alex said, voice steady despite the fear curling in his gut. James nodded, moving to the rusty panel beside the door. He grunted as he forced it open, revealing a dark shaft stretching into blackness. The stench of damp and rust hit them like a wall. "No choice," Alex said. "We climb." One by one, they began their slow, grueling ascent up the narrow ladder embedded into the shaft walls. The metallic clangs echoed in the silence, each movement stirring something unseen in the darkness above. Halfway up, a sudden, wet scrape echoed from below. Mara froze, heart skipping. "What was that?" Lila whispered, voice trembling. Alex stopped climbing, eyes darting in the darkness. "Something's down there, waiting." A low, guttural growl rumbled up the shaft, sending a chill down their spines. James whispered, "The infected. They followed us." Mara's grip tightened around the ladder. "We can't stop. Keep climbing." Behind them, shadowy forms pressed against the cage of the shaft, the infected, their glowing eyes and snarling mouths hungry for flesh. The climb felt endless, muscles burning, lungs burning, but every step forward was a battle against despair. Suddenly, a scream pierced the dark. Lila slipped, her hands losing grip. "Lila!" Mara shouted, lunging forward. Alex grabbed her just in time, fingers brushing her jacket as she dangled precariously. With trembling arms, Alex hauled her back onto the ladder. Lila gasped, tears streaming down her face. "We're not safe even here," she sobbed. Mara's jaw clenched. "No one's safe. But we survive. Together." Minutes passed like hours until finally, light burst through a narrow grate above them, a glimpse of the world outside. "Almost there," James encouraged, climbing faster. Reaching the top, they pushed open the grate and spilled onto the cracked rooftop of an abandoned hospital. The sky was bruised purple with dawn, but the city around them was a wasteland, buildings burned out, streets choked with wreckage, and distant growls hinting at the infected still roaming below. But the danger was far from over. The countdown clock blared in Mara's mind, 10 minutes left before Protocol Omega triggered. "We have to find the main control center," Alex said, scanning the horizon. "It's in the city's government complex, the last place they kept the master override." Mara's breath caught. "That's miles away, through infected territory." James shook his head. "We don't have a choice. If we don't stop Protocol Omega, everything we know will be erased." Lila wiped her face, her voice steadying. "Then we fight. We make it there." As they gathered what supplies they could scavenge from the rooftop, Mara's eyes caught movement on the street below, figures darting between ruins, faster than any infected they'd seen. "Look," she whispered. "There's something else out there." Alex squinted. "People. Survivors." But the relief was short-lived. Suddenly, a hail of gunfire erupted from a distant building. Shadows erupted into chaos, screams blending with the staccato of bullets. "Hostiles," James said grimly. "Not infected, but something worse." Mara's mind raced. The quarantine had trapped them between two deadly forces, the infected and other survivors who'd become ruthless scavengers. "We have no time," Alex urged. "Move now." The group sprinted across the rooftop, jumping over gaping holes and piles of rubble, the city around them alive with danger. Every step was a gamble, every breath a battle. The clock ticked down relentlessly, 5 minutes, 4. Suddenly, a radio crackled to life on Mara's belt. The voice was barely recognizable, distorted but urgent. "To any survivors, government forces deploying, evacuation possible, coordinates incoming." Mara's heart leapt. This could be it. The rescue we've waited for. Alex shook his head. Or another trap. But the hope was too fragile to ignore. With the infected howling below and hostile gunfire echoing in the distance, the survivors raced toward their last chance to uncover the secrets inside the quarantine, and to stop the countdown before dead America was erased forever. "Ready to continue? Just ask for part 6. The radio's crackling voice lingered in Mara's mind, a fragile thread of hope amid the chaos. Government forces deploying, evacuation possible, coordinates incoming. But hope was a dangerous thing here, a beacon that could attract not just salvation, but death. Alex motioned for silence as they crouched behind the shattered wall of what used to be a city bus terminal. The ruins around them were a twisted maze of metal and broken glass, illuminated only by the cold light of dawn. "We have to be careful," Alex whispered. "This might be a trap set by those scavengers or worse." Lila shivered but nodded. "Or it could be real. Either way, we don't have time to doubt." James checked their supplies. "We've got barely enough ammo and food to make it. If this is a trap, we'll have to fight our way out." Mara's eyes flicked to the crumpled map in her hand. The coordinates led toward the old government complex, now a fortress rumored to be both a sanctuary and a death trap. "Ready?" Mara asked, voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. The group moved cautiously, slipping through the maze of ruined streets, every shadow a potential threat. The infected still lurked in the periphery, but the scavengers were more dangerous, humans desperate enough to kill without hesitation. As they neared the complex, distant gunfire broke the eerie silence. "Hostiles ahead," James murmured. "We're not the only ones chasing this." Mara's heart pounded. The government's last hope, or their final betrayal, was within reach. But the city was a labyrinth of danger, and the clock ticked mercilessly on. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows, a soldier, wearing faded but intact gear, weapon raised but eyes wary. "Stop," the soldier commanded. Alex raised his hand slowly. "We're survivors. We came for the evacuation." The soldier hesitated, then nodded. "You're not infected. Follow me, but keep quiet. The enemy is everywhere." They followed the soldier through a maze of corridors into the heart of the government complex. Inside, technology hummed faintly, a stark contrast to the desolation outside. In a command room, a holographic map flickered, showing zones of control, infected concentrations, and escape routes. A voice crackled over the intercom. "All units, evacuation imminent. Protocol Omega suspension initiated, awaiting manual override." James stepped forward. "We need to access the override system. The countdown clock is still running." Mara glanced around nervously. "Who's in charge here? Can we trust them?" The soldier who led them nodded. "Colonel Reese. She's overseeing the operation. Follow me." They were escorted down a heavily guarded hallway. The tension was thick, no one spoke, every step echoing with the weight of lives hanging in the balance. Finally, they reached a secure room where Colonel Reese stood, her face a mask of grim determination. "You made it," she said. "Barely. Protocol Omega was a last-ditch measure to contain the virus, but it's flawed. If triggered, it would wipe out everything." Mara swallowed hard. "Can you stop it?" Reese's eyes met hers. "Only if we work together. We need to upload a virus-neutralizing code into the mainframe, but the labs beneath the city hold the key data." Alex frowned. "Labs? We thought those were destroyed." Reese shook her head. "No. Some sections remain operational, heavily guarded. We need your team to get in, retrieve the data, and upload it before the clock runs out." Mara felt the weight of the mission settle on her shoulders. "We'll do it. Whatever it takes." Reese handed them keycards and a map. "But be warned, the infected there are unlike any you've faced. They've adapted. They're hunting." As they prepared to leave, the alarms blared again, this time louder, more urgent. "Time's running out," Reese said. "Good luck." Back outside, the city seemed to hold its breath. The survivors moved with renewed purpose, their minds focused on one goal: stop Protocol Omega before it ended them all. But beneath the surface, something darker stirred, secrets buried deep inside the quarantine that could unravel everything they fought to save. Ready to move forward with Part 7? The entrance to the underground labs yawned like the mouth of some ancient beast, swallowing Mara and her group into cold, sterile darkness. The faint hum of failing electronics was punctuated by the distant, guttural growls echoing through the labyrinthine corridors. Lila tightened her grip on the makeshift weapon she carried. "This place, it feels wrong. Like something's watching us." Mara nodded, eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. Stay close. We don't know what's left down here. Alex crouched by a cracked console, fingers flying over the worn keyboard, trying to override security locks. The system is still partially active. I'm in. The heavy steel doors slid open with a reluctant hiss, revealing a series of chambers lined with broken equipment, glass vials, and shattered containment units. Stains of blood and strange residue marred the floor. This is where they experimented, James muttered grimly. Where the virus was engineered, or mutated. Suddenly, a soft mechanical whir echoed, and overhead lights flickered violently before plunging the entire corridor into darkness. Blackout, Alex whispered. Something triggered an emergency lockdown. Without warning, a chorus of snarls erupted from the shadows ahead. Twisted, half-decayed figures emerged, the infected, but different. Faster, smarter, their eyes glowing with a faint, unnatural light. They've evolved, Mara said, voice steady but tense. They're hunting. The group scrambled for cover as the infected lunged forward. Shots rang out, echoing down the sterile halls, but the creatures pressed on relentlessly, relentless and feral. Keep moving! Mara shouted. We need to reach the data vault. Dodging broken glass and flickering wiring, the survivors raced deeper into the maze. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by their ragged breaths and the snapping jaws behind them. At last, they reached a massive steel door marked Data Archive. Alex worked quickly to override the lock, sweat dripping down his brow. Almost there. A sudden crash behind them made everyone spin, more infected pouring into the corridor, blocking their retreat. Lila's eyes widened. We're trapped. Mara clenched her fists. No. We fight. The battle was brutal, shots fired, weapons swung, desperate maneuvers to hold the creatures at bay. Slowly, the group pushed forward, inch by agonizing inch. Finally, the door clicked open. Alex dove inside, frantically downloading files onto a portable drive. Minutes stretched like hours as the infected battered the door, teeth gnashing. Got it. Alex cried. Move! Mara yelled. They sprinted back through the corridors, the path behind them collapsing under the assault of relentless foes. Emerging into the daylight was like breaking a surface after drowning, gasping, disoriented, but alive. The data drive held the key to stopping Protocol Omega. But as they raced back to the government complex, a chilling realization settled over Mara. The virus wasn't just a disease. It was a weapon. A secret engineered to control humanity, and now, it was out of control. The real fight wasn't just for survival. It was for the future of dead America. Let me know when you're ready for Part 8. The government complex loomed ahead like a fortress of the forgotten, its shattered walls scarred by years of warfare and decay. Mara's group moved swiftly, clutching the data drive that held the fragile hope of stopping Protocol Omega, the last, desperate effort to contain a virus that had already destroyed their world. Colonel Reese met them at the entrance, her face grim but determined. You made it back. Now, the hardest part begins. Inside the command center, screens flickered with warnings and countdowns. The override terminal was a sleek, intimidating console bathed in harsh blue light. Alex connected the drive, his fingers trembling as lines of code scrolled rapidly across the screen. Uploading the neutralizing code now, he said. This should disable the protocol and halt the citywide purge. The clock ticked mercilessly, 2 minutes remaining. Suddenly, alarms shrieked. The complex trembled as explosions rocked the perimeter. Scavengers, Reese growled. They've breached the walls. They want this data for themselves. Mara's heart pounded. We have to finish the upload before they get here. Gunfire erupted in the hallways outside, echoing like thunder. Lila took position by the door, firing at shadowy figures pouring in. Desperate survivors turned ruthless marauders. The countdown hit 1 minute. Alex's fingers flew over the keyboard. Almost there, just a few seconds left. Suddenly, the power flickered. The screen went black. No! Alex cursed. The override was interrupted. The infected began to swarm the corridors outside, the relentless tide crashing against their defenses. Mara grabbed a spare weapon. We hold the line. Finish the upload. We don't fail here. Time slowed as Alex rebooted the system, sweat dripping from his forehead. The countdown continued, now flashing dangerously close to 0. Come on, he muttered. With a final keystroke, the system accepted the code. The countdown froze. The alarm ceased. Silence. Outside, the infected retreated, as if an invisible force pushed them back. The virus-neutralizing signal was spreading. Colonel Reese exhaled deeply. Protocol Omega is suspended. The city is safe, for now. Mara looked around at her exhausted team, survivors who had fought through darkness, betrayal, and despair. We did it, she whispered. But deep down, she knew the fight was far from over. The secrets inside the quarantine had changed everything, and the future of Dead America would be shaped by those who dared to face the darkness, again and again. If you'd like, I can help with editing or expanding any part, or creating images or scripts based on this story.